I guess I'm live on Facebook, maybe. I don't know. Still trying to figure things out. Well, apparently, yeah, it looks like it's according to the thing. It says I'm going. Okay. Well, all right. It's it's Saturday. It's noon. It's actually noon. Okay, so it's Saturday at noon, and that must mean it's the This Is Construction podcast live stream version. So let's see if this works this time. Let's see. Do a bit of housekeeping first. Let's see. That down and bring this up. Okay. All right. There's my text. All right. Okay. Well, okay. So, a little bit of housekeeping. Welcome to the This Is Construction podcast live stream, recorded on Saturday, December 16th, 2023. The last live stream, held on December 2nd, went well, except that Facebook didn't save the live stream. I don't know if it's sitting in a wastebasket somewhere on Facebook, and I probably should go look for it. I may or may not. I don't know. I don't think anybody attended the live stream, so it's kind of moot. There will be a edited version of this if this actually does post to the podcast Facebook page. There will be, you can watch this if you want, but there will also be an edited version posted to the podcast YouTube channel. As always, the goal is to have it posted by Wednesday. The last live stream that I posted up there from the 2nd, that didn't make it on, it didn't actually drop on YouTube until the following Friday. That was because there was some delays. I had a little more work in editing and post than I was anticipating. But this one, really, it should go up. It should drop by Wednesday morning. Anyway, today's live stream is the first in a series of three live streams. I'm going to be talking about woman. I'm going to be talking about women working in the construction trades, both historically and in modern times. And let me tell you, it's quite the rabbit hole. There's just so much material for me to cover, especially for the latter 20th and the current part of the 21st centuries, that I've decided to split the topics over 3 Saturdays. Today I'm going to be talking about women working in construction from the 13th century to the beginning of the 20th century. Next Saturday, December 23rd, I will be covering the 20th century, definitely the first half of the 20th century, and maybe the halfway to the end of the first 3/4 of the 20th century. There's a lot going on, a lot of changing in cultures, both here in the United States and over in Europe, especially Britain. And that's due to the 2 world wars, women entering the construction trades more openly during that time, during both of those wars, and then also later on with the formation of the women's rights movement and whatnot. So anyway, the today is the 13th century up to the 20th century, and then next Saturday will be the first half or 3/4 of the 20th century, and then after that, from wherever I wind up ending next Saturday up until the present day. So it's going to be quite a ride. So buckle up, y'all. Let's tuck into this. In this episode, I have one paper and a book chapter that I'm going to go over. Both are open access, and I'll have links in the description on the YouTube channel for anybody who'd like to read them, as well as in the comments on the for the Facebook live stream, if that winds up actually sticking around, which it apparently is recording, and things look like they're going to be okay. Fingers crossed. Anyway, the paper, which I'm going to take a look at first, is authored by, and if you are this author and if you ever see this video or happen to see it or somebody tells you about it, I apologize in advance for butchering your name. I'm not very good at this. All right, that's better. Okay, anyway. The paper is authored by Ilmaz Hatip Karasulu, PhD, and Shelley E. Roth, PhD. It was presented at the 47th Associated School of Construction, the 47th Associated Schools of Construction Annual International Conference. Boy, that's a mouthful. Now, it should come as no surprise that women working in the construction trades or in other aspects of the construction industry have traditionally been considered to be working in non-traditional occupations. And I think that this continues to this day. Although, as we will see in the next couple of episodes, that is changing. But back to history. Anyway, when I entered the construction industry back in the mid to late 1980s, if it hadn't been for my dad asking me if I wanted to come work with him as his helper, it never would have occurred to me to consider construction as a viable career option. And that's with me having grown up in a construction family. It just, I didn't see a whole lot of women working in construction, so it never occurred to me that it could be a thing for me as a female. Anyway, it wasn't just seen as something that a girl did. To understand why that was, it's important to understand from an historical perspective how society saw the roles of women and men, and even today, how a lot of people still do. Historically, for the most part, the small number of women who entered construction trades did so either by taking over their husband's business upon his death, or they entered the trade, kind of like I did, working with their father, or they might have worked with their husband, or were working as relatively unskilled laborers, doing things like digging ditches and hauling sand and rubble and whatnot. They talk about the U.S. In the paper, they talk about the U.S. Department of Labor's definition of non-traditional occupations for women as those in which women comprise 25% or less of that particular workforce. And today, that's true of most or all of the construction trades, although participation rates are much better today than they were hundreds of years ago, or even as recently as the end of the 20th century. They also make note of the efforts in the second half of the 20th century to encourage and increase the participation of women and other minorities in the construction industry. These efforts include the creation of programs for disadvantaged business enterprises, minority business enterprises, and women business enterprises. And they also make mention of the wage disparity between full-time working women and full-time working men, which had women earning about 80% of what the men were earning in 2007. And that's higher than it was in 79, when it was only 62%, but still not so good. While doing the investigating for this episode, I asked on my personal Facebook page if anyone had any questions for me on the topic of women working in construction. And one person asked about wage equality and if that has ever been a real thing. As of the signing of the Equal Pay Act in 1963, employers are required by law to pay men and women doing work that is substantially the same, although it doesn't have to be identical. Those people have to be paid the same wage. Prior to that, it was not, as far as I'm aware, a real thing unless an employer chose to do on their own, to pay men and women equally. And I think that would have been a really, really rare thing. Um, One of the many advantages for the wage earner that modern trade unions provide is wage equality. If you're working for a union signatory contractor, you know that you will be making the same wages and receiving the same benefits package as all of the men that you work with who are at the same skill level as you. Now, there can be some exceptions. Foremen and superintendents may get paid a bonus for doing that particular type of work. So they would be making more than, perhaps than the people doing the installations. That's strictly because they have more responsibility and more stress, and whatnot. Um, but it's, with things like that, it's only for extra pay in certain instances. I know in bricklayers, I believe that refractory work pays higher than your regular scale. So, if you were a bricklayer working out on a wall somewhere, a regular building or building fireplaces and whatnot, you would get the regular standard scale. But if you were doing refractory work, you would get a little bit more. And I know with the tile setters, I think we got an extra 50 cents an hour or something like that back, like 30 years ago for doing epoxy work. So, with the exceptions of things like that, specialty work or management work, if it's now and you're in a labor union, trade labor union, you're going to be, and you're a woman, you're going to be making the same amount of money that the men that you're working with are making, assuming that you're all at the same skill level. So, anyway, it's, the Equal Pay Act is federal law that covers all the states as well. And with the unions, it's a contract issue, so it's built into your contract. Let's see. The authors also talk about the importance of context in understanding how women were treated and their opportunities or lack thereof. Over human history, men and women have had roles in society, some of which had a degree of overlap. What those accepted roles are or were, and where the overlap occurred, has varied from culture to culture and through time, just as they do now. Things were much more strict as far as overlap between men and women and the types of work they did in the past than they are now. And women working outside of the home in the construction trades were not perceived in a very favorable light, especially if it was for wages. And where they were paid, it was often her husband or father who was paid, not the woman doing the work. And so now what I want to do is pull this paper up. Let's see. Yeah, this is the one. Nope, that's not the one. This is the one. All right. I want to pull this paper up and just kind of skim down through it, and kind of read some of the kind of interesting stats and whatnot that I found in the paper. Let's see. In 2008, this is in the introduction. In 2008, women accounted for 8.2% of the construction managers, while construction laborers accounted for 3.3% of the construction workforce. And that's from the Department of Labor in 2009. Related industries also show similar trends where women architects were 24.8%. How about that? That would almost bump it up to that 25% mark. Engineering technicians were 18.5%. Industrial engineers, 14.9%. Other engineers, 11.5%. And civil engineers were 10.4%. These are all from U.S. Department of Labor statistics in 2009. Let's see, they're talking about this is where the efforts were made to increase and encourage the opportunities for minorities and women in business and workforce. And that's since the 60s. They talk about in 2007, full-time working women had median weekly earnings of $614 wage or salary, which is about 80% of the 766 median for their male counterparts. Now, that's something that I had mentioned. What they don't say in the paper, at least in this paragraph, that I can see is why the wage or salary difference was what it was. It doesn't. They're talking about median for male weekly earnings and medians, but it looks like they're lumping all the wage statistics and together. If you've got a woman, if you have a lot of women working in lower paid jobs and the bulk of the men are working in jobs that are normally higher paid, then that's going to skew your statistics. I mean, it'll reflect the fact that women were working in lower paid jobs more than men were, maybe, but it doesn't really give you any kind of information about like a peer-to-peer salary difference, like a woman bricklayer versus a male bricklayer, both journeyed. So, but it's still interesting. They talk about issues related to women in construction internationally, and how things differ as far as job satisfaction and development, perception and professional acceptance, etc. Professional societies and unions, they mention them taking the lead in addressing these issues in more recent years, advocating for women in the workplace. In construction and related industries, they say, there are several education and advocacy efforts by National Society of Women in Construction, women construction owners and executives, professional women in construction, the Society of Women Engineers, and the Coalition of Labor Union Women. Now, if you're interested in the history of women working in construction, or if you're interested in learning about construction trades, how to get into the construction industry, either by entering a trade or opening a business, or learning, becoming educated and entering construction management of some type. These would all be very good organizations for you to check out, in addition to any labor union locals in your area. Let's see. They talk about diversity and participation of minorities and women in construction and related industries, and not only through uh, apprenticeships, but actually in professional degree programs. Some universities have established and support student chapters of professional societies, and diversity is actively discussed in classrooms, they say. Let's see. There's not a whole lot of documented information related to women working in the construction trades until you get to the mid 50s, or well, maybe not the mid 50s, but in the 1950s. Um, there were several. They say there were several efforts highlighting women's participation in the workforce, but they don't say if it's the construction workforce. But that would be in the 19th century. Um, but they say the efforts were limited, uh, or the efforts include limited information about the. Okay, yeah. So that's the thing, is there's a difference between entering the workforce in general and women entering the construction industry. There were a lot of women actually working, but they were doing other things. They were doing things that were quote unquote more feminine type work. Uh, anyway, let's. Um, the next chapter is historical perspective on building construction and conditions, and it's interesting because they use a description from the 16th century, um, where they talk about building craftsmen, what a building craftsman was, and they say the person is a different breed. Um, Many of them not being wage earners, but more like almost like it sounds like they're sounds like if we were to describe them now more as a small scale contractor than as a regular, I'm going to work for you and you're going to pay me an hourly wage or a daily wage. Um, and also, so I don't know what kind of business license or the equivalent was required back in the 16th century, or anything like that. But it's just you'll have to check the paper out and read this. It's really interesting. They're supplying raw materials and the labor of others. I just, it really sounds like a lot of them were operating like small scale independent contractors. And let's say the description highlights the project based nature of construction work. Um, Most of the time, well, when I was working in the masonry industry in Portland, um, everything was project based. You were hired for the job, and you kind of acted. We were members of the Bricklayers Union. We kind of acted like freelancers, and we had the signatory contractors that we could work for, and but the bricklayers didn't act as a hiring hall. It was each person's responsibility to be aware of the different contractors available in their and doing work in their area. And if you got finished with a job, company you were working for didn't have another job to send you to, then you started making the calls. You put in for your unemployment comp, and then you started making the rounds to the contractors in the area. And if you couldn't find anything in the area and you're journeyed, then you started, sending feelers out, further afield. So that you could, if there wasn't any work going on in the Portland area, there might be something going on in Seattle or down in California. Well, usually there was stuff going on down in California. But anyway, it's kind of interesting. They they talk about construction being a major economic factor in medieval and early modern Europe. But even though there were women working in the trades, there aren't a whole lot of references to those women uh, in the record keeping. And they say when, and I'm quoting them here, when reading the literature on the history of architecture, construction, and related trades, one has the impression that women made virtually no contribution. And that is another cultural artifact that women might be working in the trades, um, even as relatively unskilled laborers, but it wasn't acceptable to actually record them working, which is just kind of mind-boggling to me. I just I it's such a different culture than what I enjoy in the United States, and many people enjoy around Europe and in many other places in the world. Canada, just all over the place. That to consider that women were looked down on so much for doing that kind of work. It's just, it's sad. But I could go on a rant, and I'm going to try to not. Uh, then the next section of the paper is entitled "Participation of Women in Construction Workforce," and they talk about there being limited evidence of working in construction in the ancient world. One of the earliest written records of women working was on a construction site in 13th century Spain. There was a group of women were recorded as working as day laborers, working on stone and wood structures in Navarre. Uh, uh, Data's been one of the authors has compiled data on women construction laborers and material suppliers working in England, France, Germany, and Spain, dating from the 13th to the 17th centuries. General stats such as the number of women working in actually women working as in any capacity really can't be made. Nobody knows, because the documentation varies so much from one place to another. However, they say the evidence that is available is remarkable and can provide uh, some parallels with how women are working in the industry today. Um, they address three. They say that with this data, they can address the position a woman would attain in the industry, her potential earnings, and how society would perceive her as a woman working in construction. And this is kind of cringeworthy also. Um,
Single and extremely poor married women could work as day laborers on construction sites, performing unskilled tasks, uh, such as the ones that I had mentioned earlier. Um, say women were often hired in gangs, and in some cases they were slaves. And it's like, well, I don't know if they were slaves, they wouldn't have been paid at all. I would think. It's another thing that I could go on a rant on. Was a lot of the times women working in the building trades, as I mentioned earlier, were working either as a part of a construction family, but from time to time, middle class women could learn a trade or business, kind of the way I did, uh, by working with their fathers or husbands. Um, there city records showing that women were working with their fathers or husbands in various building trades. Masonry, carpentry, etc. And this was in the 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries in France, but still not very many. If you were an aristocratic or no, an aristocrat or a noblewoman, where you were the primary patron of a construction project, you could exert some influence on the design and management of the project. Uh, I don't know. I suppose you could probably even encourage, if there were some women who could work on the project, you could encourage the hiring of them too. Uh, yeah, here's yeah, the women played half. Yeah, they cite an example of people working on a construction of a cathedral in 15th century Toledo. Um, and also from 17th century England, of a man and his son working for 4.5 days, and his wife for 2 days, doing some stone repair at a church and carrying away debris and dirt. Uh, the man received 12D a day. I don't know what the D is. Um, Compared with the normal 10D for a laborer. And his son and wife each got 6D a day. Um, so I don't know. I'm assuming that that money would have been paid to the husband or the husband and father. I don't know though. Um, yeah, and they say that although gender segregation and pay scales differed, uh, there was gender segregation and the pay scales differed in those examples. They support the fact that women were working on construction projects. Probably, though, a lot less than they were in the 80s when I started. Um, yeah, boy, this just is. Talk about how society perceived women who did this type of work. And many historical authors made it clear that women should be discouraged from working outside the home and especially should not engage in manual labor. Women who could not adhere to this prescription, according to the authors, were considered to be of the lowest class in society, just one step above the class of prostitutes. Let that freaking sink in. Their poverty was seen as a punishment for sin. The just instead, society wanted women to engage in crafts relating to. Uh, there were certain crafts related to building design that were deemed acceptable employment for women, such as sculpting, painting, and the weaving of tapestries, which people thought uplifted the mind and maintained the virtue of chastity. More bullshit. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I enjoy the privilege of being able to have access to um, uh, jobs that I want to do, and people are discouraged from, even if they think it's something that a woman shouldn't be doing, because of our social norms now. They're really discouraged from saying that openly. I I remember when I was working on one of the contractors I used to work for in the 90s. When I first entered the trades, my uncle told me, he says, you're going to have to grow a thick skin because a lot of men don't want women working in this type of work. And so I was like, well, okay, because I was kind of used to swimming against the stream anyway, or against the current. So and I had worked with Dad for several years, 3-4 years, and I was pretty comfortable, uh, around commercial construction job sites, and but when Dad retired, I had to go out and start working for other contractors, instead of just working for Dad all the time. And I actually, in all the years that I worked in the Portland area, out of the Bricklayers and Allied Crafts Local 1 in Portland, I have to say that I was treated with an awful lot of respect. And I don't know what the men I worked with actually felt, but I do know how they treated me. And out of all those guys that I worked with, young and old, there was only one who turned out to be a horse's ass. And he was actually a misogynist. He would openly say, in front of me even, that women belong at home in the kitchen, fixing their husband dinner and bearing children. And I was just like, you want to be an asshole about things and go for it, but don't expect all of us girls to toe the line for you. But I was really surprised, considering the warning that my uncle gave me. And I don't know if it was because I was just good enough at pulling my own weight, or if it was because my dad was who he was, and he was really well known in the local and very well liked by an awful lot of people. And I was his daughter, and I know that had to have given me, at least a leg up of some sort. But anyway, I just, when I see stuff like this about, when women working in construction in a certain age being just one step above prostitutes, says number one, I don't think prostitutes should be seen as the dregs of society. That's bullshit, and nobody else should either. But anyway, getting back to the paper. Yeah, this is going to go more than an hour because it's already 40 minutes into it, and I'm almost finished with the first paper. But the second thing that I'm going to talk about is even more interesting, and I'm only going to do just a little bit of it because we're going to get to the rest of that one next week. So in this paper, there's also a really cool illustration um, of, let's see, Christine de Pizan, The Book of the City of Ladies. And I am not going to try to pronounce, I believe it is French. Or it's either French or it's Italian. Anyway, I'm just not going to try it. It has a illustration of or a scan of this illustration, and it says the description is Christine Despazan is instructing her ladies to actively construct a city themselves in which they could conduct model lives. And then you have the picture of the women dressed in their nice dresses, wearing crowns on their heads, except for, I'm assuming it is Christine, who has a different kind of head adornment. And there are, and set in stone, building the wall around their city. But it's kind of having worked in construction, and I see an illustration like this, and having worked around masonry and all of that, and shapestone and work with mortar and everything, and seeing I cannot imagine women wearing the kind of outfits that these women are wearing in this illustration. And I just watching BBC programs where they have Ruth Goodman, I think it is, and they're life on a Tudor farm and life on an Edwardian farm, and I know that you don't stay clean and doing stuff like that, so it's just but it's an interesting illustration. It kind of gives you an idea of how people maybe saw women and how unrealistic their views were. I think, my opinion at any rate. So anyway, let's see. I'm getting down to the end of this paper. I say, speaking about pay scale, a report by the United States Congress Joint Economic Committee states that while the pay gap has narrowed over the last 25 years, the average full-time working woman earns only 80 cents for every dollar earned by the average full-time working man. Here again, they're not comparing apples. They're not comparing job apples to job apples. They don't say anything about how the women are probably, not only are they earning 80 cents for every dollar earned by the average full-time working man, but the jobs that they're working are also lower paid. So you don't know if that 80-cent discrepancy is because the women are working at jobs that are just naturally lower. More women are working at average lower paying jobs than the men are, or what. It doesn't say if it's not like all women electricians are only making every cents for every dollar earned. That's what I'm talking about. This is good news in this next paragraph. Talks about how women are perceived by society and the social barriers they encounter within various professions, and how our status has absolutely improved in the 21st century. I think we were not looked down upon too much in the last quarter of the 20th century, because I know I'm just speaking from my own personal experience, working in construction, both as a regular wage earner and also as a contractor. And I didn't see anybody, not my peers, not my friends. Maybe my friends wouldn't have said something because they were my friends if their opinion of me wasn't too high as far as me working in construction. But I just didn't really encounter any kind of negative feedback from any of the other contractors or any of the other tradespeople that I worked with. Now, again, maybe that's just because they were being polite and not telling me what they actually thought. But um, I don't just go on what people say; I go on their behavior also. So, I don't know. Anyway, there are still problems encountered by women in construction. Uh, these are included in these slow career progression that contributes to disillusionment with the industry and its culture, and that's a very real thing. I know companies have well, maybe not companies so much, and I'm speaking more for larger companies that are working on multiple large uh, uh, commercial projects all at the same time. But I did notice that um, contractors, and especially their foremen, or project man, well, not so much project managers, foremen, um, have certain people that they like to work with. And there's a variety of reasons for that. I've noticed it, even some of that. I'm not working in construction right now because of knee issues, but where I do work, it's in a warehouse, and we have managers who have their people that they want, that they want working with them. I know I got pulled over to a different part of the warehouse when one manager who liked what I did and liked the way I did it and the efficiency that I did it in. He's like, "You're coming with me, and gonna come on over here and work on my crew." And you get that. And if you're not, if you're in an area where there's work's a little slow, um, the people that the crew leaders or the whoever's in charge of hiring um, want to work with on certain jobs, those are the people that are going to get hired first if they're available, and that can be very discouraging to somebody, especially if they're new in the trade. So it just, yeah, I can see, and that can definitely slow your career progression. Um, they talk about difficulty balancing work and family, including primary child care. Um, this is, maybe it's true more for single parents, because I've known some men who were single parents and they had the same kind of problems that women generally have. Um, there's attitude barriers caused by male dominance, and really, like I say, out of all my years of working in construction, I didn't just the only guy who was just openly misogynistic was just that one guy, and oddly enough, he was my age. All the older guys, they're like, as long we don't care who you are, as long as you can do the work, come on over and work on our crew. There's job hopping to overcome career barriers caused by slow advancement and an inflexible work structure. Um, I'm not sure. I suppose maybe it depends on the trade. Um, Pretty much, at least how I saw it, unless you wanted to go into management, um, once you got to be journeyed, and especially after you'd been journeyed for a number of years, um, and you became what my dad used to refer to as a mechanic, which means that, you could send you out on any kind of a job within your skill set and just say, here's the job, there's the materials, here's the project manager for the general contractor, and see you later, and when you're done, come back and get another job ticket. And I have worked for contractors who, small contractors, who were like that. um, so I don't know, job hopping, if that refers to, um, moving from one trade to another. Um, if that's what they're talking about, then that would be cross training. I always figured that cross training was a good thing, because lots of times if one trade is slow, in your general area, I'm going to go back to using the masonry trades as my reference, because that's what I'm familiar with. But if the bricklayers are slow, maybe the tile setters are working. If the tile setters are slow, maybe the marble masons are working. Maybe when two are slow, the third one's working. That wasn't very often that I saw all of the trades specialties slack or dead in the water for work. It's happened. But most of the time, if you're pretty well cross trained, you could keep working pretty steadily, even in Portland, which is not like the biggest labor market for large scale commercial project, which is mostly what I worked on when I was working through the local. Um, Let's see. However, the single largest contributor to women leaving the construction industry and women failing to choose construction as a viable career was culture. And I agree with that, especially in the past. Not so much now in the future, or not so much now in the present, not the future. Hopefully, it'll be even better in the future. But the uh, uh, yeah, their conclusions are that construction has been considered historically, as well as in the present day, to be a non-traditional occupation for women. There are various issues and obstacles that you as a woman will have to overcome or adapt to. Um, Despite the difficulties and barriers, women have been involved in construction throughout history, and evidence can be documented as early as the 13th century. I'm reading pretty much from their paper here. Um, yeah, it's also points out that gender segregation and compensation issues were not just strictly confined to the construction industry. It was common all across society, and that's a cultural thing. Women were not seen as people who should be working outside of the home. And if you did, then, oh, good Lord, not for money. Come on. Uh, Establishing a historical background is critical in discussing issues related to diversity and development. That's absolutely key. One of the things that um, I have really had my nose rubbed in reading this paper and the chapter that I'm going to get to here in a few minutes, um, it's it's cultural. I used to think it was because um, people didn't think that women were strong enough to do the type of work that you do in construction. And a lot of women aren't, but so a lot of men aren't also. Um, I know one of the reasons I didn't do a bricklayer's apprenticeship when I did my tile setting and marble masonry apprenticeships is because I wouldn't have a problem laying brick, but it's the damn block that I didn't want to deal with. Because I have moved cinder block or cement masonry units, I think is the technical term for them. And it's like, I do not want to be moving pellets and pellets and pellets of that stuff around. I just, when I was young, I was real strong and I was freaking bulletproof, but not bulletproof to keep from having major injuries, repetitive task injuries, to things like my shoulders, my elbows, my wrists, and my back. Um, I just, I was like, if all I had to do was learn to lay brick, yeah, I'd do that all day. But no, not the block. So yeah, um, you know, but it, for the most part, uh, in construction, women can do the jobs just as well as the men. And the thing keeping women out of construction historically has really been how society sees women and what society believes women should be doing and what they believe they should absolutely not be doing. And if you are living in a country that is pretty progressive and liberal and freedom loving, I mean, for real freedom loving, not fake freedom loving. Like, well, we'll say that we believe in freedom and liberty, and then restrict what certain classes of people are allowed to do because it's not proper. Um, then you really are living in a kind of a golden age of opportunity, especially if you are a woman. Um, construction trades are just, they are so satisfying to work in. And if you're doing union work, they're really well paid. Um, it's just, you have opportunities that women before us have not had for millennia. I mean, literally millennia. So I think, I am really excited to start talking next week about how women began advancing beyond this, narrow narrow corridor that society has historically boxed us into. And with that, Um, also, this paper, before I get on to the book chapter, this paper has some really good references. It's got 2 pages of page and a half worth of references, and I don't know. I have not checked out very many of these, so I don't know which are available as open access and which are behind paywalls. But the I will have the link down in the description on YouTube and on the in the comments for this live stream. And let's see if there's any. I don't see any reviews. One, oh, I got one share. That was me. That was me. That was me sharing it to my homepage. So yeah, no clips, no reactions, no comments, no viewers. Okay.
Well, all right. So anyway, I will post the links on the Facebook page. I will post the links under this video in the comments to this paper and the chapter that I'm going to get into here in a minute or two, and also some other information that I think is interesting and pertains to this first part of this three-part series. So anyway, I see Bits is still sacked out over there. That's cute. All right. Anyway, now on to the other paper. If I can get my cursor to behave here. There we go. And I'm going to take a swig of coffee. Now, this next thing that I'm going to go through, and I'm just going to touch on it because it's just the very first part of this that covers the the historical, like the hundreds of years ago historical stuff. This I really love this thing. Let's see. It was it's a chapter by Linda Clark and Chris Wall entitled Omitted from History: Women in the Building Trades, from the Proceedings of the Second International Congress on Construction History. It covers the period in Britain from the mid-14th century to the early 2000s. And I got this from Cambridge University, Department of Architecture. And I will have a link in the description and on the Facebook in the comments on for both the chapter, which also is awesome. This thing has like over 5 pages of references, so lots and lots of stuff to dig in, to tuck into if you want to do a deep dive. But this is from Cambridge University's where I got the PDF for this. But also I'm going to have a link to the entire book that the chapter was taken from. And that will also be along with the description for the standalone PDF. The book, I believe, is available open access. You'll have to check if you take the link to where the book is. You'll have to check to see if you can download it. I haven't yet. So anyway, this is really nice. The chapter is over 20 pages long as a PDF, and that's the 5+ pages of references in addition to that. And it goes all the way from it covers Britain, but it also mentions some other parts of Europe. But primarily it's about women in construction in Britain from the mid-14th century to the early 2000s. So this will be a big part of what I will be talking about next week and the following week. And you'll be able to see how women working in construction, how our roles, or their roles, how have changed, and how society's view of women working in the construction trades has changed over the past 600-700 years. And it's just, if I was to put it on a graph, you'd have this slow, almost flat line, but a slight incline going. And then when you hit the first half of the 20th century, it starts climbing up fairly good. And then, it goes up, and then there's downs and up and downs. And then toward the end of the 20th century, it just really starts to take off. And especially after 2016, I guess. But that's as far as women working in the trades, but also how society has perceived women working in the trades, which is actually what, one of the things that's made it possible for women to succeed in the trades. So I think it's just absolutely fascinating. I'm, a bit of a history nerd anyway, and I'm interested in how cultures change as they intersect with each other, as they interact with each other, and it from 2000 on. Um, I've noticed a lot of changes in our culture here, but also cultures around the world. But I will yak about that next Saturday and the following Saturday. But anyway, um, this chapter provides pretty extensive coverage of the topic, um, and I'll be referring to it as well. Now I'm reading off of my notes. Let's see. Already did that. Um, let's see. Let's see. I already covered all of that. Let's see. We'll go back to the thing here. Um, there we go. Let's see. I'm gonna have to zoom in on this a little bit. There, that's better. Interestingly, in Britain, uh, wage labor, the building industry was one of the main industries where labor was regulated by statute. And I don't know, in the U.S., um, we had guilds, I guess. I don't know, because all of that would have come over here from Europe. But they talk about labor was regulated by statute in the building industry. Even today, it maintains a strong tradition of apprenticeship, uh, being the only industry with an industrial training board and a statutory levy, which is interesting. Now, we have over here, um, we have the Bureau of Labor and Industries, and it actually oversees apprenticeship programs. Be those apprenticeship programs that are run by labor unions, trade labor unions, or um, apprenticeship programs run by colleges or other schools. But so I don't know. Maybe that's their industrial training board is something similar to what Bully does over here in the United States. Um, this is it's yeah, it says and yet it remains an almost exclusively white male preserve, the most segregated sector in the economy. Um, and then it goes on to say, these are peculiarities of the building industry, too often little recognized, especially the latter. Indeed, it is salutary to read the many books on the history of the building trades guilds and unions that make no reference at all either to this male exclusivity or to those women who have succeeded in participating. And it says this omission is serious, much more serious, when we find out that there have been times through history when women have been
had a pretty significant uh, presence in the building trades. And in the paper, they're going to talk about those periods and to explain why and how women were included or excluded. It talks about women as building artisans versus women as wage laborers. Apparently, those were the two routes from feudalism for building wage labor, and women were participating in that differently. Uh, there's artisan production associated with town corporations, and I'm assuming that's public money work, where you're building the for the village or the hamlet or the city or whatever. Um, the second originally stemmed from the commutation of statute labor and labor on the demesne, and went with the concomitant rise in wage labor in the countryside. And let me look up demesne, the definition. I think I remember what demesne means, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it means just like an area or region or there we go. Land attached, okay. Land attached to a manor and retained for the owner's own use. So, okay. All right. Demesne, be like domain. Okay, well that would be how it relates to the rise in wage labor in the countryside. So, let's see. Oops. Let me get back over here into PDF. It says, in general, guilds and chartered town corporations were they excluded women, but not always explicitly. Come on, Bits. Come on here. This down here. There you go. Attaboy. Come on over there. Attaboy. He had to come through. He probably wants a treat. Anyway, okay. The cat made me lose my place here. Yeah, the guilds and chartered town corporations were exclusive of women, but not always explicitly. And women still did have some involvement. Social convention still trying to keep women out of the trades as much as possible. Says it was enough to keep women out of masonry, roofing, and carpentry. I don't know why it would. Maybe it had to do with who was running the guilds, because that can be a thing too. Union leadership, I would say guild leadership, company leadership. Those all are going to determine how those entities view women and treat women. If you have a business that is just gung-ho for diversifying its workforce, it's going to diversify its workforce. Even if it has to go hunting for people to have a nice, big, diverse workforce, it will do it. If you have leadership in an organization that doesn't want diversity, they will do everything they can to keep that, that workforce from becoming diversified. So I mean, it's not just the culture overall of society, but it also has to do with the individual culture, the culture of that individual business, which is uh, generated by the leadership in the business. It's the head of the company, um, the head of the foreman of a crew, or the they're the ones. Leadership is gonna say what goes and what don't go. And so if you have somebody who wants to hire women, they're going to be hiring women. If you get somebody who doesn't want to hire women, then they're going to try to find all the ways to not hire women that they can find legally. Um, let's see. There talks about the masons of the 14th century and London carpenters, and how they did address sistren and brethren, but such references to women, they say, are likely to have been to the not insignificant number of mistresses who took over as widows from their husbands. So, you know, not a woman who gets into it just on her own, but somebody who their husband dies, and you got to support yourself somehow, and that's how they, maybe what they know, and so that's what they do. And uh, the the guild says, okay, we'll let you go. Normally we don't like women doing this kind of stuff, but we'll go ahead and let you do it. Hello, Bets. Claw on the leg. All right. Apprenticeship was generally the only way of getting into a building trade, and it was a male institution, and the trade was passed down patrilineally. Apprenticeship being a, a boys only club, and it was passed on patrilineally. Um, the apprenticeship was the apprentice was indentured for up to 7 years, an apprentice to be a master in the trade concerned. Let's see, which was generally had to do with the materials that the company had a royal license to sell. Uh, that's generally contractors in construction. They will provide the materials. Uh, the architect or the engineer or the designer specifies them, and the contractor provides them. And so if you're a masonry contractor, then you're supplying tile and brick and mortar and all that kind of stuff. If you're a carpentry company, then you're supplying wood. Um, let's see. Yeah, this here is really interesting, and I had not until I read this. Never occurred to me that an apprenticeship would be a form of rite of passage for a boy to go from being a boy to being a man. It just never occurred to me. Maybe it's because I'm a woman. I'm not into that kind of stuff. But it's just this one of those cultural things that I was talking about, as far as one of the reasons why probably apprenticeship was reserved for men and boys, or well, not men, but boys,
becoming men. And if all you ever have is boys coming into the apprenticeship, then that's all they ever see as being who is qualified to become an apprentice in the first place. And it's this. The talk. I'm going to read directly from this chapter, paragraph, and then this thing. Uh, I'm just going to read this and think of it what you will. Um, there were important social reasons for preserving apprenticeship as a male institution. Male apprentices were not allowed to marry. As late as 1670, William Smith was threatened to be disenfranchised from the London Tylers and Bricklayers Company if there was sufficient evidence that he had married within the term of his indenture. This is Bell 1939, 44. This was because, as Symington has explained, and this is the in quotes, apprenticeship was a period when the role of the male apprentice moved from lad to man. It was a transitional period that meant far more than learning a skill. The close identification of apprenticeship with sexual development helps to identify the role of the institution in defining masculinity and conversely femininity, and in excluding females from the system. So you have a system of trades, an institution of the trades, which can only be learned through an apprenticeship. And that apprenticeship is exclusive to males. And that makes being a woman trying to work in a construction trade damned hard. So, and it goes on to say, more than this, as Sheridan points out, the exclusion of women from apprenticeship contracts was therefore an integral part of a closed guild system which ensured that the transfer of property and power remained with the privileged group. Yeah, so they go on to talk about feudal apprenticeship, and it was and how it was associated with into a property relation was critical. Oh, okay. Common law and marriage from the late 13th to the late 19th centuries deprived women of the right to own personal property. Now, I always thought and I don't know, maybe when they say personal property, they're talking about real property also. I knew about the real property, but if personal property in this context means what it does nowadays, if you were a woman, you couldn't own anything. You couldn't even, if you were a woman working in the trowel trade, you couldn't even own a damn trowel. The patriarchal control just totally firmly embedded in common law, and women had no, as it says, women had no separate wage at all. Everything was paid to her husband or father, or I suppose if she never married, and well, I don't know. I suppose if she never married and she lived with her brother's family, then probably get paid to her brother. Yikes. Yeah, it says it cites a case of a bricklayer who was paid $8 per day for himself and $8D per day for himself and $2D for his wife. For basically, sounds like she was working as a laborer. And Well, said as time wore on, the patriarchal control became more pronounced, and women were kept from being very involved in the trade that their husband was working in. But there was an exception. Uh, the solo woman uh, who had the same rights as a man and who was quite common in the building trades, which is kind of weird. Um, she was either, they say she was either working on her own, or she was a widow who took over her deceased husband's company. Although she could be a member of the company, but she didn't have equal status and couldn't advance in the hierarchy. Uh, and there are records of women like this in medieval London who are found in company records and paying fees for themselves, apprentices and journeymen, and being allowed to engage in extra labor. They even have some instances where uh, apprentices had filed claims against certain women who were running companies. Let's see. It also says that women participated in building trade companies in towns, but their role was mostly as assistants to husbands or fathers. Um, there was a lot of work to restrain women as independent traders, and they were apparently pretty strong in Britain, but across the channel in Brittany, um, the women were at one point were completely denied access to apprenticeships or entry as independent workers. Uh, However, marriage to the daughter or widow of a master conferred a dowry and the right to enter the guild at a reduced rate. Oh, that was for apprentices who didn't have a male relative to get him in. Let's see. They talk about women outside of town, out in the countryside working, and how they were in the building trades. Although for some reason carpentry and thatching remained invariably male. Probably had to do with maybe guild leadership, I'm thinking. Um, they had let's see. Uh, okay. Uh, the statute of artificers of 1562 to 63, regulated through justices of the peace, uh, transformed local trade company practice in town and country uh, uh, by integrating uh, wage labor and binding it to a locality. Uh, uh, Maybe they weren't allowed to travel, or maybe their wages were bound to that area. Not sure. Okay, yeah. Okay. It says the statute uh, applied in its area of enforcement. Contract of services for all hired labor. It did this by setting up a framework for wage assessment. Okay, they controlled the wages and the area's apprenticeship system. And interestingly, uh, it uh, uh, it it was gender neutral in some of its wording, by referring to apprentices as persons, but then it also used boys and girls, masters and mistresses. So that was a little a somewhat of an improvement. It says under the parish apprenticeship system, boys were bound until they were 24 and girls until they were 21 or were married. And it's said that 34% in the southern counties of England between the 7th and 19th centuries, um, the 34% of parish apprentices were girls. That is outstanding. They were apprenticed in 51 occupations, including bricklayers, carpenters, joiners, and shipwrights. It says they normally completed and practiced their trade and were especially numerous in the 18th century. That's interesting. 34% would bring you up above the construction being an unusual um, uh, occupation for women threshold. Uh, and it went up, then probably went down again. It did decline. I like this. I like the way I see, until I started reading stuff like this, I never would have thought the learning carpentry would be to be taught the art and mystery of carpenter. Art and mystery. Let's see, wide range of trades to which women were apprenticed, such as stonemasons and furniture makers. It says fewer than 10% of those apprenticed by their families were, however, female, and after 1800, no cases had been found. So it dropped off. Either that, or maybe they just went back to not reporting it. I don't know. The first half of the 18th century, women were working as ironmongers, carpenters, bricklayers, butchers, and blacksmiths. Well, two of those would be construction. Oh God, yeah, I'm at an hour and 36 minutes, so I'm thinking that I have had better. We're starting to get up there. I think I'm gonna shut this one down right here. We're on page 4. So I will be getting back to this next week, next Saturday, where we will continue where I'm leaving off here right now. I need to do, going to do a really quick realm of awesome. And today's realm of awesome selection is directly related to what I've been talking to here. Um, it's a Facebook group called Women in Construction. And I tell you what, if you're a woman and you're interested in looking into construction as a potential career, or if you're just curious about it, or if you are a woman working in construction and would like to meet other wonderful, absolutely awesome women working in construction in all sorts of different trades. Um, you need to check out this Facebook group. It's a public group, so you don't, it's open to anyone. It is pretty heavily moderated, but I have never come across such an open, wonderful, caring, and sharing group of construction workers. Um, they're just absolutely amazing. There are welders, commercial divers working on oil rigs. There are people in project management. I mean, just about every trade you can think of, I think they have represented at this Women in Construction. So I am going to put the link in the description to the group, and as well as to the Facebook. Um, Geez, I wonder if that's still even going. Let me take a look, because I got off of that tab and onto another. No, it's still going. Looky there. Facebook is going long. An hour and 39 minutes. Yo. And it says I'm still alive. How about that? So anyway, I will put the link to that also in the Facebook description, or the comments under the Facebook live stream. Hopefully it'll be archived there. If not, I'll when I cross post a link to the YouTube edition of this episode, I will put it in the comments under the Facebook. Also, if you happen to be watching this on, I gotta move my. Hang on a second. Where'd my cursor go? There it is. It's a rogue cursor. All right, there we go. I put this. I keep looking up. I usually have my the window for the video up in the corner here, and that's why I keep looking up there, because I keep looking up. I'm looking at myself. I'm talking to myself. Anyway, I will now. I moved it in front of you, and I thumped the mic. That was not good. Anyway, I moved the thing in front of the camera, so now I can see that. Anyway, I can look at the camera instead of looking up in the corner. Anyway, I will post the link to that Facebook group. I encourage everybody to go and check them out. And also, if you happen to be watching this on as the YouTube version, please do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed this episode, long as it was, and it's going to be a little bit longer by the time I get the titles and the credits on there, give it a thumbs up, and click the little bell so you get notified of the next episode of This is Construction. And I hope to see you next week. And I am out.